everyone, welcome back to our channel, Cuz Books, and for today's video I'm going to be saying goodbye to 22 books. Here's just a little bit of a sampling of what I've got for us. Let's go ahead and get started because I fear that this will be a bit of a long one. Some of the books that I'm getting rid of are books that have been on my bookshelf, and I simply realized at this point that I'm not going to read them. I don't really have an interest to read them, so there's no sense in keeping them. Some of them are duplicates. I purchased them at another point in time, didn't realize it. And then some of them are books that I read last year, but I just don't want to keep them in my bookshelf because I either didn't like them or they simply weren't up to par to be kept in my collection. I'm going to be going through these. There's no real particular order for them, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started with the first two since they're right next to each other, and they are by Alex Gava. I discovered Alex Gava when I went to Goodwill at one point way long ago. I picked up one of her books, the first book in the Maggie Odell series. This is the Creed series. This is about Ryder Creed. I don't know much about it. I picked up two of the books because it's another series of hers, and quite simply I just don't think that I have any interest in these anymore. It's another series that I would have to keep up with, and I'm not really wanting to do all of that. So the first one that I'm getting rid of is Breaking Creed, and then the second one is Silent Creed. The third book I'm saying goodbye to is Limetown. Apparently this is the prequel to a podcast, which I think I remember reading that, but totally forgot about it. So as I was going through, I realized I've never listened to that podcast. I don't have plans to listen to the podcast, so it doesn't make sense for me to keep a book based on a podcast. If I haven't mentioned it, it's called Limetown. This is by a couple of guys, Zach Akers, Skip Bronke, and Cody. Is it Cody or Coat Smith? But this is what it looks like. As you can see, I bought this on bargain for about $6. So I'm saying goodbye to it. The fourth one I'm saying goodbye to is Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I had this in paperback form. I am letting go of this one because I bought the hardcover on clearance, and I prefer hardcovers over paperbacks, so this one just had to go. The next one is Dishonored, the Corroded Man by Adam Christopher. This is based on the Dishonored video game series. I'm saying goodbye to this because, again, it's another one that I already had, and I totally forgot that I already had it, so I repurchased it, and I obviously don't want to keep two copies. So this one also is saying bye. Well, I guess I'm saying bye. This one is one that I mentioned in my video of all the books I read in 2020, and this is one that I DNF'd. This is called A Seal Never Quits, a Texas Navy SEALs book by Holly Costello, and this is quite simply one that I read for a little bit and I really couldn't get into it, which stinks because I was really into the aspect of the SEAL part, but it just right off the bat was like, it was just way too obvious and way too pushed, his romance with this, I think she's the vet there, and it didn't make sense. I could see if they had started flirting and there was something building, but it's literally like, bam, they're like in love type of thing, so I wasn't vibing with it. The next book on the goodbye list is The Explorer by James Smith. I went to the bookstore a long time ago with my parents. My mom was looking for something specific and she didn't end up finding it, but I felt like I couldn't leave the bookstore without buying a book. So I went to clearance quickly and I picked this up because it sounded intriguing. But again, it's one that's just pretty much sat on my bookshelf and I haven't really reached for it. I was going to try to read it last year. I got one page in, so I didn't really count it as a DNF, but it just didn't spark anything in me to continue reading on. And this next one lost the book cover, but it's Dead Time by Stephen White. If you're interested in just seeing a black book cover. This is more a hand-me-down from my brother. I have two books that are hand-me-downs from him, so I have no idea what this is about, but it's just sat in my collection and my bookshelf long enough that it's reached the point where I know I'm not going to reach for it and I just have to let it go. And the other hand-me-down is Vanished by Tess Gerritsen. I believe this is the first book in the Rizzolian Isles series. I did watch the TV show recently with my husband and his mom, and I thought it was a pretty good TV show. From what my husband said, the first episode is pretty much book 1 and 2 so I kind of got a glimpse of that, but I honestly have no intention of reading the series, so I decided to say goodbye to it as well. And as you can see, it's also a little bit shelved just because it wasn't placed very well. I don't know if you can tell here, but next up is Looking for Alaska by John Green. Honestly, I purchased this more for how it looks because it's so tiny. If you would have seen my my first video for this year, it was basically all of the books that I read in 2020, and I have another book in this format, and that is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Nevin, which is really nice to have read it in that format. But before I knew about that one, I had seen this one at a local bookstore, so I thought it was quirky enough that I wanted to pick it up. But honestly, I have no intention of reading it. John Green just really isn't an author that I gear to. I picked up his other book, The Fault in Our Stars, is that what it's called? And I didn't even read it, so I'm not gonna read this book. I know it, and it's just time for me to say goodbye to it. And then this next one is NW by Zadie Smith. This is another one that I DNF'd last year. I simply couldn't quite get into it. I didn't like the styling, the format of it. It wasn't for me. So that's why I'm saying goodbye to it. And then the next few books that I'm going to show you are all books that I read last year, but again, I either didn't like them or I didn't think that they were good enough to continue to being in my bookshelf of books that I've read. So we're going to go through those as well. The first one is Kill Screen by Benjamin Reeves. He is a writer for Game Informer. If you guys know of that magazine, he's one of the writers in it. I think he also is now doing their Game Informer podcast, their weekly one, if I remember correctly. I haven't really been keeping up with it too much, so I don't know, but I think that's what he's doing now, last time that I heard. This is a decent book. It's the first edition of it, so it still has typos, but rereading it last year, I realized that it's a pretty dark book, and I just don't want to I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first time, and I also just decided that, you know, it wouldn't go through a third reread, so there's no sense in me keeping it, even though it's kind of special to me because I tweeted about the book when it first came out and he did respond, but I'd rather hang on to the memory of the tweet instead of the book itself. This book is The Hiding Place by C.J. Tudor. This is another one that I thought was pretty good. I believe I rated this as a 3 as I did for Kill Screen. This is about a man who has to go back to his old hometown that he grew up in because someone sent him a letter that said, I know what happened to your sister and it's happening again. So he's going back really to deal with that, and I guess in a way get closure. It was a pretty decent book. Originally it was going to be a 4, but I plopped it down back to 3 just because of the ending. But it's not good enough to keep on my bookshelf, unfortunately. Okay, another one is The Assistants by Camille Perry. This is another one that I read. I think this was my January book for last year. Last year I picked a book a month. That was going to be like the book for the month, and then I would read other books in between. If I remember correctly, this was my January one, maybe my February one, but I believe it was my January one. It was a decent book. This is about an assistant that has the opportunity to pay off her debt, only she's doing it illegally, with illegal means, and she kind of gets caught, and then her scheme just builds and builds and builds until it has to pop at a certain point. But I just didn't like the ending of this book. I felt like there were no consequences for people, so I don't want to keep it in my bookshelf, and I know I'm not going to reread it, and I know that my husband has no interest in it, so no point in keeping it. Next one is The A to Z of You and Me by James Hanna. This is a disappointing book for me. I believe that, yeah, I put this at a 2 simply because I thought, like, I knew the premise was that this guy was in hospice and he was going to play a game of A to Z with A being every body part, but his story is just so, like, I feel bad, but I kind of don't feel bad because he made some decisions in this book that he completely disregarded the person that he loved and the person that loved him, and he chose to do things his own way, and now he just lives with bitterness in his heart and with regrets. And so it was a really depressing book for me to finish reading. I was kind of like in a blue funk after reading it, so I don't recommend this at all. I thought it would have some type of redemption, but it didn't, and that's why it's also I'm gonna say goodbye to it. Next one is Final Girls by Riley Sager. I was super excited to read this book. I had heard good things about it. My husband said that he was hearing good things about it. So I decided to pick it up and read it. And this just did not turn out the way I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be more of someone out to get the final girls, but it's really the story of one final girl. And I mean, it's the story of two final girls, but it's very highly centered on one character specifically. And she makes some decisions that aren't the best. And the ending was just not what I wanted. It wasn't what I thought would happen. And for that reason, like, I mean, my husband was gonna read it, and because I didn't like it, he's kind of decided not to. So yeah, again, this is another one that I was really disappointed by. And I'm happy that I picked it up on Bargain at least, because I would have felt really like played if I had spent full price for it. Next up is La Casa en Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. This is translated by Elena Poniatowska. I'm pretty for sure that last name is not Spanish, but I could be wrong. This is a book that I read mainly because it's so hard to find books in Spanish, and I had bought this a while ago at a local bookstore, and I thought this is the year to kind of read it. Why not? I didn't enjoy this book. I wouldn't say that I was disappointed by it, but it was definitely a book that I didn't enjoy. This was more character driven, and I am not one to really like books that are character driven. I prefer a plot. But this is the story of just a girl that is living in Mango Street, and she doesn't like it. She doesn't really like her neighbors. She thinks, you know, that there could be so much more, and she just kind of grows up observing things from the house, but it just wasn't a book that was for me. Next one is a self-help book that isn't a self-help book. This is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fudge by Mark Manson. Basically, this is just like, it has some good points. It's got some points, I guess, from like Buddhism in here. My issue with this book is, one, like, I know the title says to not give a fudge, but there are so many F-bombs in the first few pages and like in the book throughout that it's kind of like obnoxious at a certain point. You don't need that many F-bombs to prove a point. And my other issue was that the author mentioned studies and research, but he didn't actually have any of that information in like notes or notations. He didn't have a reference page for them, so it was kind of hard to really see the points if you don't have references. And I know that this is a self-help book, it's not a research book, but as someone who, you know, like did research at one point in college for my classes, it like the importance of having that information is, it's important. Like, you need to have it so that people can look at it. That's my fridge going off, so I apologize for that. But it's important so that people can look at it and look further into the studies and do research on their own. And what he presents is the information, but not the source to go further into it, which is what I didn't like about this mainly. So I rated this a 2. It's definitely gotta go. Next up is I Hate Everyone But You from Gabby Dunn and Allison Raskin. This is another book that was a 2 for me. I bought this on clearance, I think, yeah, for like $5.97 as it says here on the back. Also, I had little notes for when I did my video. This is just a book that I didn't like. It is a series apparently, but it's not a series that I'm going to focus on or want to read. I quite simply didn't like the two girls. They were kind of just very self-centered in their own issues, and it was hard to distinguish sometimes who was who. This is about a story about two girls that basically grow up together, best friends, but they end up going to separate colleges, and they have to kind of learn to be on their own and also kind of navigate their friendship still and see if it can still survive. I didn't like it. This was also another one that was more character driven, and this was just a no for me. Next up is This Lie Will Kill You by Chelsea Pitcher. I picked this up on clearance as well, mainly because it said that it was kind of like inspired or in the spirit of Karen McManus, which is the author of This Lie Will Kill You? Is that the title of it? I will check here, but I don't think I have it. But with that being said, I loved that book, so I thought, hey, if this is in the spirit of, it's going to be good. And it was a decent book. I rated it a 2 though, just because there was an overuse of the word pale, and I don't remember much about the characters. I know that it was about 5 people got invited to what they thought would be like a competition to win a scholarship. That's not true. It's really to, in a way, punish them for being involved in someone's death. And that's not spoiling it for you. It literally says it on the like cover here. But yeah, it was a 2. It was okay. I don't know that I would pick up another book from the author unless, again, it's on sale. But this is just a book that also has to go. Second to last book is The Girls by Emma Cline, and I'm getting rid of this book because I hated this book. I read this book. I don't even remember what month I chose this to be, but I wish I hadn't. I wish I had never bought this book. It is truly such a terrible, terrible book. I don't understand how the author got her like advance on this book. I don't understand how this book made it on people's must-read list. I don't understand how this book ever made it on any list of recommendations because it's such a crap book. I feel that strongly about it. I read this book. There was nothing in this book that had any redemption for the characters. There was nothing in this book that made me like care about the main character. She's just the premise itself is it's about a cult. It's literally the Manson cult, and she just created a character to fit into it, but doesn't actually dive into the cult itself in that sense. Like, it just, I can't with this book. I hate this book, and it is absolutely a book that I would never recommend to anybody except maybe to recommend them to stay away from it. I would go on, but I'm not going to because I want to say goodbye to this book. I never want to think about this book again. Yeah, truly horrible book. I gave it a 1 star. Definitely a 1 star. Don't. Last book that I am saying goodbye to is The June Boys by Court Stevens. This is actually a pretty good book. I believe I gave this a 3. It's about a girl who believes that her cousin was kidnapped by, oh my goodness, the Gemini Thief. That's what the serial kidnapper is called, the Gemini Thief. She believes that her cousin was kidnapped by the Gemini Thief. She's on a mission to find him, and along the process, she starts to think something a little sinister about her dad, and she has to process the idea that maybe her dad is a Gemini Thief, and how she needs to move forward with that knowledge, and how she just how she wants to move forward with that knowledge, like the best way to go about it without necessarily hurting her father in the process. It was a good book. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I think I gave this a 3, but it's just not one that I'm going to keep in my bookshelf. I'm trying to be better about keeping books and only keeping books that I really enjoyed. And while I liked this one, I think that if I wanted to reread it, I could just as easily go to the library and pick it up from there instead of holding on to this, because I feel like it could take me years to pick it back up again. Okay, everyone, that's it. Those are the 22 books that I'm saying goodbye to for the moment. I don't know if by the end of the year I'll have more books to say goodbye to, but at the beginning of this year, this is what I have so far. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and we will see you when we see you. Bye.